4 years after the roller coaster crash, we find college student Nick O'Bannon enjoying an auto race at McKinley Speedway with his girlfriend Lori Milligan and their friends, Hunt and Janet. While watching the race, they encounter various characters: a man in a cowboy hat blocking their way, a mother advising her sons to use tampons as earplugs, a mechanic yelling at a couple in front of him to sit down, and a guard instructing another couple to move their feet. Amidst this, Nick notices the wooden bench breaking and cracks appearing in the concrete structure above their seats. An eerie wind starts blowing, causing a flyer to flutter and land near Nick. The flyer displays pictures of all the deceased racers, unsettling Nick. He becomes even more unnerved when he notices a creepy message about death on someone else's shirt. Seeing Nick distressed, his girlfriend Lori asks if he's okay. Nick shares his concerns, feeling like something ominous is nearby. Suddenly, a screwdriver left by a team in the car falls onto the road, puncturing another car's tire. The car flips several times before its tire detaches and flies off, fatally injuring the mechanic's wife. Panic ensues as everyone rushes to safety. However, before they can leave the grandstand, chaos erupts as another car catches fire. The flaming debris collides with the already cracking upper deck of the stands, causing it to collapse. One by one, all the people, including the mechanic, the mother of the boys, the cowboy hat guy, and the couple instructed by the guard, meet their demise. The roof collapses on Hunt and his girlfriend Janet, followed by a fire engulfing the guard and Lori. The explosion sends Nick flying, impaling him on a rod and killing him instantly. After witnessing this vision, Nick is left stunned. His certainty about the impending crash grows as events unfold. Just as in his premonition, the arrival of the cowboy hat guy in front of their seats, the mother advising her kids to use tampons as earplugs, the mechanic cursing the person in front of him, and the guard instructing the couple to move their feet. Confident in his belief of an impending crash, Nick shares his concerns with his friends. Others nearby overhear, but nobody believes him. As they attempt to exit the grandstand, Nick accidentally falls onto the mechanic, sparking a scuffle. The altercation draws in people sitting nearby, causing them to eventually leave the grandstand. One man named Andy instructs his wife to wait so he can confront Nick for causing trouble. As the group exits the grandstand, Nick recounts his vivid vision of the crash as if he had witnessed it firsthand. Before others can dismiss him, the crash unfolds before their eyes, sparking chaos. Andy attempts to return inside to rescue his wife, but the guard George prevents him, understanding that going back inside would mean his death. Before anyone can fully comprehend the situation, a tire from the racetrack flies out and fatally injures the mechanic's wife, shocking everyone present. At night, the survivors gather at the memorial for the victims. Samantha, the mother of the two boys, expresses gratitude to Nick for saving their lives. Before guard George can question Nick about the events, he is confronted by Andy, who is grieving the loss of his wife. Andy blames George for not allowing him to go back inside, believing that if he had, his wife might still be alive. Andy's hostile demeanor towards George suggests he may seek retribution against him in the future. That night, Nick falls asleep and experiences another vision. This time he sees a red door, a horseshoe, a hook, and a lot of fire. Meanwhile, Andy parks his truck outside George's home with malicious intentions. He plans to frighten George by burning a cross sign outside his house and digging a grave in his lawn. As Andy retrieves a large wooden cross, the hook of his tow truck falls onto the road. While Andy is preoccupied with his scheme, the horseshoes inside his truck fall onto the radio button, increasing its volume. The loud noise causes soda cans on the dashboard to shake and fall onto the gear shift lever. The truck starts moving, causing the fuel tank to fall and spill fuel onto the road. Andy attempts to stop the vehicle, but it becomes locked from the inside. As he tries to halt the truck from behind, the earlier fallen hook wraps around his foot, dragging him along the road. The friction between the metal chain and the road ignites the spilled petrol, starting a fire that engulfs Andy. Moments later, the truck explodes, resulting in Andy's death. Surprisingly, George, the intended target, emerges unharmed from his house. The next day, Janet calls Lori and urges her to watch the news about Andy's death. The red door featured in Nick's vision turns out to be of George's house. Suddenly, Nick has another vision, this time seeing a fan, a pair of scissors, a straightener, and a cigarette. Upon seeing the red door on the news, Nick realizes that his experiences are not just dreams, but visions foretelling the next person's death. He confides in Lori, explaining how the elements from his vision led to Andy's demise. Uncertain about who the next victim will be, Nick trusts his gut feeling, which has persisted since the racetrack incident. Meanwhile, Samantha parks her car outside a salon, where her boys start throwing stones on the lawn across the road. Notably, the gardener of that lawn, who is about to mow the grass, is smoking a cigarette, the same cigarette Nick saw in his vision. Sending her boys away to a game shop, Samantha proceeds with her hair appointment. Suddenly, the chair she's sitting on malfunctions, startling Samantha as it unexpectedly descends. But the ordeal doesn't end there. Just as in Nick's vision, the straightener triggers a hairspray can when it comes into contact with it, while the fan in the room falls to the ground, narrowly missing Samantha. After avoiding all potential dangers, Samantha leaves the salon. Meanwhile, the gardener is mowing the grass when a stone thrown by the boys gets caught in the rotating blade of the lawnmower. The high-speed blade launches the stone directly at Samantha, piercing her eye and killing her instantly. Upon learning of her death, Nick and Lori contact Janet and Hunt to discuss premonitions. They share their findings about numerous instances where people had premonitions about disasters. What unsettles Janet is Nick's revelation that every survivor died in the exact order they were supposed to die in the accident. However, Hunt remains skeptical and resorts to making jokes, even in this grim situation. Feeling frightened by the concept of death, Janet asks Nick and Lori to exclude her from their eerie conversation, suggesting they can call her later. After Janet and Hunt depart, Nick experiences another vision, this time seeing flames, a metal rope, and a gas cylinder. To jog his memory and piece together the order of survivors' deaths in his premonition, Nick visits the wreckage of the racetrack. While there, he recalls some of the deaths but struggles to remember others. Suddenly, he is approached by guard George, who listens to Nick's story and assists him in viewing the CCTV footage of the grandstand. Upon seeing the footage, Nick realizes that the mechanic is the next target of death. To locate the mechanic, they zoom in on his hoodie and spot the logo of his mechanic shop printed on the back. Believing in Nick's story, George decides to accompany him to the garage to inform the mechanic, Carter, about the situation. After hearing the warning, Carter argues that he faces dangerous equipment every day, and if his death were imminent, it would have already occurred. Inside the shop, a jar of liquid topples onto a machine, sparking a malfunction that releases the connected car. Just before the car can collide with Carter, the rope attached to it ends, narrowly saving his life. As Carter converses with Nick and Lori, the metal structure of the rope breaks loose and strikes a carbon dioxide cylinder. The released gas causes a kickback, propelling the cylinder into Carter and launching him through a metal grid fence to his death. With Carter gone, it's Janet and Hunt's turn. However, Nick is unsure who dies first, as they both perish in the collapse simultaneously. It's decided that George and Lori will search for Janet, while Nick will seek out Hunt. As Hunt enjoys himself at a public swimming pool, Janet leaves the dry cleaners and sits in her car. A pigeon defecates on her windshield, prompting her to try to clean it with the wipers and water, but to no avail. Suddenly, the car's sunroof opens by itself. After struggling, Janet manages to close it. Meanwhile, Nick attempts to call Hunt, but he doesn't answer. Just then, Nick experiences another vision, seeing a coin, a spark in an electrical board, and a water pipe breaking in half. He immediately warns Hunt to avoid water. Unfortunately, before Hunt can receive the message, a boy shoots him with a water gun, causing his phone to get wet. Hunt takes the gun from the boy and tosses it aside, unaware that it has triggered the lever to drain the pool. Meanwhile, Janet receives a call from Lori but quickly hangs up, stating she's at the car wash and will call back later. With Nick's warning in mind, Lori and George swiftly search for the nearby car wash to keep Janet away from the water. Amidst the car wash process, a spark in the electrical board triggers a malfunction, causing Janet's car to stop in the middle. To her dismay, the sunroof opens again. Suddenly, the main water pipe above the car bursts, flooding water into Janet's vehicle. Despite her efforts to escape, Janet finds herself trapped inside the car, unable to get out. Meanwhile, a golf ball hits Hunt's hand, causing his lucky coin to fall into the swimming pool. Considering its importance, he dives in to retrieve it. However, while at the bottom, the suction of the drainage system becomes so intense that Hunt becomes glued to the drain. Despite his efforts to free himself, he's unable to move even an inch. Tragically, Hunt ends up being disemboweled by the drain pipe. As Nick arrives on the scene, all he sees is blood everywhere and Hunt's lucky coin. Meanwhile, Janet is on the brink of being submerged in the water, but she manages to stick her head out of the sunroof just in time. However, her ordeal isn't over yet. The electric board sparks once again, reigniting the car wash machinery. Before Janet can be injured by the scrubbing brushes, Lori arrives and crashes into her car, halting its movement. Acting swiftly, she assists Janet in getting out of the car, ultimately saving her life. George accepts that it's now his turn, but he isn't afraid. His driving force is the desire to reunite with his family, whom he lost in a car accident due to his drunk driving. As George heads home, Nick and Lori start to secure their house, uncertain if the chain of events has been broken after saving Janet's life. Suddenly, the eerie wind returns, causing water to spill onto the newspaper. While most of it gets wet, some words remain dry, forming the phrase, "Through action, they were saved." Nick and Lori interpret the dry words on the wet newspaper as a sign that the chain of death has been broken and no one else has to die. They waste no time informing George about this development. Upon arriving at his house, they discover him hanging by a rope. However, the rope breaks, thwarting his attempt. George confesses that he had been trying to end his life all day without success. The survivors conclude that saving Janet must have disrupted death's list and broken the chain of events. Overjoyed, the group celebrates their newfound lease on life with a bottle of champagne. The next day, we find Nick packing his belongings to travel to Amsterdam with Lori. While packing, he experiences another vision. This time, he sees water dripping from a faucet, sirens blaring, water spreading on the floor, and a snake coiling around a rod. Suddenly, the remote falls to the floor, turning on the television. The channel broadcasts news about Jonathan Groves, a survivor of the Speedway crash rescued from the rubble. Nick immediately recognizes him as the cowboy hat guy who sat in front of them in the grandstand. Acting quickly, he calls George and urges him to get to the hospital as soon as possible, realizing they got the order of death wrong. Arriving at the hospital, George questions how someone else could be on the list if they hadn't left the racetrack with them. Nick explains that if he had asked George to move like in the premonition, George would have died. However, since Nick left the racetrack before asking, it changed the man's fate, resulting in injury rather than death. Before Nick and George can locate Jonathan, his room is flooded with water due to a nurse leaving the faucet running, causing the tub to overflow and flood the room. Unfortunately, Jonathan's room is directly beneath the flooded one. Before he can escape, the floor collapses under the weight of the tub, crushing Jonathan. Realizing that Lori and Janet are in danger, Nick and George head to the mall, where the women had planned to watch a movie. While crossing the road, George is struck by an ambulance bearing the same snake sign Nick saw in his premonition. Without wasting time, Nick heads to the mall. Along the way, he experiences another vision, this time seeing a lot of fire. The words, "It's here," carved on a surface, a rain of nails, and a massive explosion. Urgently, he enters the mall and begins searching the movie theaters for Janet and Lori. Meanwhile, Lori begins to experience the same eerie feeling Nick once had, noticing signs that make her fear something bad is imminent. Janet reassures her, insisting that everything is over. Suddenly, Nick decides against rescuing the girls directly and instead opts to prevent the explosion that threatens their lives. He rushes to the warehouse located behind the theater's wall, where a fire has already ignited. However, before Nick can intervene, he trips over a piece of wood, causing the nail gun in front of him to discharge and injure his arm. Now immobilized and nailed to the wall, Nick sees fuel leaking and realizes the imminent danger. Desperate, he grabs a flaming wooden stick and raises it to trigger the water sprinkler system. Miraculously, his plan succeeds, and the fire is extinguished just in time to prevent a catastrophic explosion. In doing so, Nick not only saves Janet and Lori, but also spares the lives of countless others who would have perished in the blast. 2 weeks later, Nick, Janet, and Lori are spending time at a coffee shop. An elderly man approaches Nick and expresses gratitude for stopping the mall fire. As they sit, Nick begins to experience the familiar, eerie feeling once more. He notices signs like a picture of a swimming pool, a car race on the television, and the words, "It is coming," carved on the table, reminiscent of his previous vision. It leads him to wonder whether they truly changed anything, or if their presence at the coffee shop was part of the plan all along. As he ponders this, a nearby scaffold collapses onto the road, causing a truck to swerve and crash into the cafe, tragically claiming the lives of Nick, Lori, and Janet. 5 years after this incident, Wendy, a high school senior, is at an amusement park with her classmates for their farewell trip before graduation. She's tasked with taking photographs of the students to sell for the yearbook. Alongside her boyfriend Jason, Wendy is making some final memories with her friends Carrie and her boyfriend Kevin. While capturing photos of her classmates, Wendy unexpectedly encounters her sister Julie, who has snuck out to join the trip meant only for seniors. It becomes clear that Wendy and Julie don't get along and despise each other. Among the seniors is Frankie Cheeks, who owns a camera and uses it to take inappropriate photographs of his crush, Ashlyn and Ashley. The friends' next ride is the Devil's Flight roller coaster, but Wendy gets a weird feeling about it. She shares her concern with her boyfriend, Jason, expressing her unease. Jason tries to reassure her, suggesting that everyone's imagination runs wild when they're scared, but it never turns out as bad as they imagine. Despite Jason's comforting words, Wendy still harbors a sense of fear about the ride. Other classmates, Ian and Aaron, attempt to calm her down, but in an unconventional manner. They mention that the odds of dying on a roller coaster are 1 in 250 million, though this information doesn't alleviate Wendy's anxiety much. After Kevin purchases tickets for 4, they are assigned the front car of the roller coaster. Wendy panics because she doesn't want to sit in the front. Kevin flips a coin to decide who will sit with Wendy in the back. He loses the toss and is asked to give up his front seat. Jason, being a caring boyfriend, advises Kevin to take care of Wendy since she's feeling uneasy. Ashlyn and Ashley also board the roller coaster, and their creepy stalker, Frankie, follows them to the ride and quickly takes Kevin and Wendy's seats. Not wanting to cause trouble, Wendy suggests to Kevin that they not fight and instead sit in the back. Once everyone is seated, the operator checks their restraints to ensure everything is secure. As expected, one of the students, Lewis, has a loose restraint, and the operator assists him in fixing it. However, this inadvertently causes the hydraulics securing the restraints to leak. Wendy attempts to capture the moment with her camera, but the operator informs her that cameras are not allowed on the ride. Hearing this, Frankie discreetly hides his camcorder, intending to use it during the ride without detection. As the ride begins, everything seems fine, until Frankie's camcorder falls during a loop and lands on the track. When the cars pass over the camcorder, they crush it, causing a disturbance that damages the hydraulics securing the restraints. Consequently, the restraints become dislodged and start moving upwards, jeopardizing the safety of those on board. One by one, the students begin to fall, with some being crushed by the following cars while others plummet to the ground as the cars detach from the tracks. Eventually, Kevin and Wendy also lose their lives in the crash. Suddenly, Wendy snaps back to reality, realizing it was nothing but a vision. What frightens her even more is that events are unfolding exactly as she saw in her vision, including the operator instructing her not to use her camera. Before the operator can start the ride, Wendy begins screaming at the top of her lungs, insisting that they need to get off the roller coaster as it's going to crash. She repeatedly warns everyone about the potential rupture of the hydraulics and the collapse of the tracks, but no one believes her. Wendy tries to express her concerns to the owner, which only angers Lewis, who accuses Wendy of seeking attention. Furious at Lewis's accusation, Kevin gets into a fight with him. In the scuffle, Lewis accidentally hits Aaron, prompting her boyfriend, Ian, to join the fray. Witnessing the chaos, Ashley and Ashlyn decide to abandon their plan to ride the roller coaster, seeking peace elsewhere. Frankie also decides to leave the roller coaster, influenced by the departure of the girls he has been following. Jason urges the operator to let him off the ride so he can ensure his girlfriend's safety. While the students involved in the fight are kicked off the ride for causing trouble, the others on board begin chanting for the ride to start. Unfortunately, the operators are unable to hear Jason's pleas and initiate the ride. Realizing that her boyfriend is still on the roller coaster, Wendy rushes back to the platform, but the ride has already started. The operators eject her and Kevin from the ride. They attempt to calm the panicked Wendy until they witness the roller coaster crash, resulting in the deaths of everyone on board. Wendy is deeply affected by the loss of her best friend and boyfriend. Kevin feels it's his responsibility to comfort Wendy, as Jason had instructed him to take care of her on the ride. However, Wendy rejects his support, as she has never liked him due to his uncontrollable and overly energetic nature. As Wendy leaves the school, Kevin approaches her and shares what he found online. He explains how he discovered information about the plane crash of Flight 180 and recounts how Alex had a vision and exited the plane, which later exploded. Kevin tells Wendy about the strange sequence of events where the survivors began dying in unusual accidents, mirroring the order in which they would have died on the plane. Thinking Kevin is joking or trying to mess with her, Wendy becomes infuriated. She drives away without listening to any more of his unsettling information. Later that day, Ashley and Ashlyn arrive at a tanning salon for some touch-ups. The worker there is occupied with a conversation with his girlfriend, so he steps outside to catch better signals. Before leaving, he instructs the girls to dispose of their drinks in the trash can, as drinks aren't allowed inside. Ashley pretends to throw hers away, but when he leaves, she keeps the drink, unaware that it will be the biggest mistake of her life. Later, the girls enter the salon, leaving their drinks on the table and proceed to their tanning beds to get a tan. On the other hand, Wendy's sister Julie discovers her favorite charm bracelet in Wendy's room, which angers her. As they argue, Wendy breaks down in tears, confiding in Julie about her overwhelming guilt over Jason. She feels that she should have done everything possible to prevent the tragedy on the ride. Wendy understands that what's done cannot be undone, but she doesn't want to feel the same regret for Julie too. Unable to talk to their mom and dad and feeling like Julie is all she has left, Wendy urges her sister to stay with her when she finds a place of her own one day. Wendy's heartfelt words touch Julie, and for a moment, the two seem to reconcile. As Wendy reviews the photographs she took at the amusement park, park, she experiences that strange feeling again, as if she's noticed something peculiar in her boyfriend's picture. Upon examining Ashley's photo, she notices something odd on her face, a red light resembling fire. Meanwhile, the tanning salon worker places a sunscreen tube under the door to prevent it from shutting and locking. Unfortunately, the pressure from the door causes the cream inside the tube to leak. Over time, the tube becomes thin enough to trigger the door to shut on its own. Simultaneously, water from Ashley's cold drink drips from the table and lands on the voltage regulator of the tanning beds. This causes the device to malfunction and increase the heat of the beds automatically. Sensing the rising temperature, Ashlyn decides to lower it. Sensing that something is wrong, Wendy tries to call the girls, but none of them answer her calls. Meanwhile, a coat hanger falls due to the wind, knocking over an artificial tree, which in turn topples a nearby shelf. The wooden shelf falls onto one of the tanning beds, and when Ashley attempts to open her bed, the shelf board becomes wedged between the two beds, trapping both of them inside. As time passes, the temperature inside the tanning beds continues to rise, burning the girls trapped within. Despite their efforts to unlock the beds, they are unable to free themselves. Hearing their screams, the salon worker attempts to enter the salon but finds the door locked. Ashlyn had locked the front door to prevent other clients from entering the salon while they were inside. The temperature inside the beds becomes so high that it ignites a fire, engulfing the two girls and resulting in their deaths. At the funeral, Wendy is at the cemetery when Kevin approaches her. Wendy then shares with him some photographs that exhibit signs related to the incidents that occurred after the photos were taken. She shows him a photograph of the pile-up incident that clearly displays a signboard stating "Construction, next 180." Wendy believes that the presence of those words on the signboard, coinciding with the pile-up incident occurring exactly 1 year after the plane crash of Flight 180, was some kind of sign. Kevin, who initially dismissed Wendy's theory about Flight 180, now begins to reconsider after seeing Ashley and Ashlyn's photograph with their faces covered in red light. He starts to believe in the concept of death's design and the importance of deciphering clues in the photographs to prevent future deaths. Suddenly, Wendy collapses from exhaustion due to not having eaten for some time. Kevin rushes to take her to a restaurant, where he explains to her how the survivors of Flight 180 died in the same order they would have perished on the plane. Realizing that Frankie may be next, they examine his photograph to determine the potential cause of his death. In the photo, Frankie is seen hanging from a rope ladder, leading them to speculate that he may fall from it or be hanged. As Wendy prepares to order food at the restaurant, she notices glitches on the screen and a change in radio channels in the car, indicating potential signs related to the impending danger. Suddenly, a truck comes dangerously close to Kevin's car, prompting Wendy to tap the back of the truck to signal the driver to move forward. As if that wasn't enough, a pickup truck is seen careening out of control down the hill without a driver. At the same time, the truck near Kevin's car collides with Wendy's side of the door, trapping her inside the vehicle. Witnessing the oncoming pickup truck, both survivors attempt to exit the car, but they are unable to find a way out. With no other option, Kevin breaks the windshield to escape the vehicle. Just as they manage to get out, the car behind them reverses, causing the pickup truck to crash into their vehicle. The impact of the collision causes the engine of Kevin's car to dislodge, and the fan inside crushes the skull of the person in front of it, revealed to be Frankie. After Frankie's death, Wendy and Kevin become even more fearful. They begin to doubt their ability to interpret the photographs, as nothing in Frankie's picture indicated the way he died. However, upon reviewing the photos again, they are shocked to discover another picture of Frankie standing in front of a fan, depicting exactly how he died. Realizing that Lewis was sitting behind Frankie, they quickly search for a picture of him to uncover how he might die. Fortunately, they find one that appears to show weight descending onto Lewis's head. Before leaving to inform Lewis about the situation, Wendy suggests they should also examine their own pictures. However, Kevin refuses, fearing that if he does, he will become obsessed with them and unable to focus on outsmarting death. Soon, Kevin and Wendy approach Lewis at a gym and inform him about the situation. They even ask him if he remembers who the two people sitting in front of them were, because they don't recall. Instead of answering the question, Lewis dismisses their theory as nonsense. He believes that Wendy and Kevin are simply projecting their guilt over losing their partners. Things take a chilling turn when Wendy spots the same swords in the gym, as shown in the photograph. While Lewis is working out, the swords behind him suddenly fall, narrowly missing his head but cutting the wire of the workout machine he is using. Confident in his ability to defy death, Lewis then lifts the weights, only for them to fall due to the torn wire, crushing his head. After Lewis, it's Aaron and Ian's turn. Their photograph taken by Wendy shows Aaron hiding her face and giving an appropriate hand sign while Ian is holding a revolver. Without wasting time, Wendy and Kevin approach the couple at the warehouse where they work. Just like Lewis, they don't believe in Wendy's premonitions and her theory about death coming after the survivors of the roller coaster crash. While talking to them, Wendy suddenly feels something odd. A box of nails falls onto the accelerator pedal of a forklift, causing it to move and plow through everything in its path. Sensing danger, Wendy pushes Ian away just before a shelf full of sharp wooden pieces collapses, narrowly missing him. However, tragedy strikes as Aaron is thrown against another shelf, which has a nail gun that fires repeatedly into her face until she takes her final breath. Everyone is shocked, especially Ian, who holds Wendy responsible for Aaron's death. Wendy and Kevin are interrogated by the police but are soon released due to lack of evidence. Exiting the police station, they discuss how their intervention saved Ian from death, but it then shifted to the next person, Aaron. They conclude that someone else was sitting behind Ian and Aaron, meaning that person is now the next target. Kevin instructs Wendy to review the pictures for more clues, while he asks his batchmates if anyone else got off the ride with them. As they depart, Ian keeps a watchful eye on them. Later that night, Julie enters Wendy's room to retrieve her lucky bracelet. Upon waking up, Wendy notices the last picture she took on the roller coaster and realizes that the person seated in front of her is wearing the same charm bracelet their grandmother gave to Julie. Concerned for Julie's safety, Wendy attempts to stop her, but Julie has already left the house. Wendy immediately calls Kevin and informs him of the situation. Recognizing that if Julie was sitting in front of them, her friends Amber or Perry might be seated next to her, Wendy decides to go to the tricentennial celebration where Julie and her friends are. Before leaving, Kevin urges Wendy to review their photographs from the amusement park. He fears that after Julie, it will be their turn, and he wants to be prepared. Wendy's photo is simple, with the only clue being McKinley written on her t-shirt. It's worth noting that Ian's full name is Ian McKinley, and Wendy seems to understand what this clue means. Kevin's photo, taken by Wendy, is bright and overexposed because she flashed the camera in his face. Kevin looks around and sees a banner announcing a fireworks display at the event. He realizes that he might die from fireworks, which would cause his face to be bright and overexposed. While Wendy heads to the event, she notices someone following her. Meanwhile, Kevin, who works as a security guard at the same event, decides to find Julie and her friends. Just as Wendy arrives, Kevin locates Julie, but she's not willing to listen to him. As the fireworks start, a horse at the event gets scared by the loud noises. Its fear escalates when some boys throw crackers under its feet. The horse's natural instinct to flee kicks in and it tries to escape the perceived danger. Meanwhile, Kevin approaches Julie again, but she responds by showing him the same rude gesture she did in the photograph at the amusement park. Before Wendy can warn her, the scared horse suddenly appears. It knocks down Kevin and pulls Julie along with it by wrapping the rope around her neck. The horse continues dragging her until Kevin grabs a sword from a guard, cutting the rope just before a sharp plow could hit Julie's head. Before everyone can settle down, the horse gets scared again by the fireworks. As it flees, it pulls along the sharp pole it was tied to, which impales one of Julie's friends, killing her instantly. Then, Kevin becomes the target. The horse kicks him into a food cart, causing a cylinder there to leak and catch fire. Wendy arrives just in time to save Kevin, but he suffers minor burns in the process. After Kevin, it's Wendy's turn, and she already knows how she'll die. When Ian arrives, Wendy tells her friends that he plans to kill her with a revolver to avenge Aaron's death. While Ian threatens Wendy, the fireworks cart behind her shifts direction due to the fact that there is less weight on one side. Wendy and her friends duck just in time, causing the fireworks to hit a cherry picker behind Ian, narrowly missing him. Ian celebrates his supposed victory, but the cherry picker malfunctions due to the fireworks, causing it to collapse and crush him to death. 5 months later, Wendy is on a train with her friend and roommate. Suddenly, she gets that strange feeling again, so she decides to leave the train. As she exits, she bumps into Julie, who wasn't supposed to arrive until tonight. The two catch up and Wendy confides her concerns to Julie. Julie reassures her, saying they've all cheated death before and it's behind them now. Just as Wendy is about to introduce Julie to her friends, she spots someone else on the train, Kevin. Wendy immediately senses that it's no coincidence they're all on the same train, especially when she's getting that strange feeling again. Amidst this, a mouse on the tracks triggers a spark in the exposed wires, causing the track to shift. The train derails, resulting in Julie and Kevin's deaths. Wendy, the sole survivor, sustains a broken leg. Before she can move away, another train approaches, crushing her to death. Suddenly, Wendy snaps back to her present state, realizing it was just another vision. Upon realizing the impending crash, the trio does everything they can to prevent it. They pull the emergency brake and attempt to open the doors, but their efforts prove futile. Death claims each of them, showing that it arrives regardless of their actions. As the franchise draws to a close, we see Molly ending her relationship with her colleague and boyfriend, Sam Lawton. Sam is deeply hurt by her decision, but he accepts it. Sam's friend and colleague, Peter, is dating Candace, an intern at the company and a gymnast. Among their co-workers are Olivia, a bold and confident woman, and Isaac Palmer, a co-worker known for his womanizing ways. Sam's close friend is Nathan Sears, a supervisor at the company's factory. All the workers are preparing to board a bus for a company retreat with their boss, Dennis Lapman. Sam notices the words, "Watch your step," written on the bus but brushes it off and boards anyway. Meanwhile, Isaac seeks privacy in the bus bathroom to talk to his girlfriend. As the bus travels, it approaches the North Bay Bridge, which is under repair. One of the workers brandishes a stop sign, prompting the bus driver to halt suddenly. The abrupt stop causes Sam's body to lurch forward, cutting his thumb on a sharp metal object on the seat. Suddenly, the song "Dust in the Wind" begins playing on the radio. Before the bus can cross the bridge, it collapses, possibly due to high winds or ongoing construction, causing structural weaknesses. Sam and other passengers scramble to evacuate the bus, desperate to reach the other end of the bridge. Amid the chaos, Candace attempts to cling to the bridge railing but tragically falls and lands on the boat's sharp mast, resulting in her instant death. With no time to waste, Sam urges Peter to keep moving forward. As Isaac exits the bathroom, he discovers the bus teetering on the edge of the collapsing bridge. Before he can react, the bus plunges into the river, the water pressure causing his demise. Molly manages to reach the other side of the collapsed bridge. Olivia, unable to see clearly without her glasses, is assisted by Sam as they traverse the iron rod connecting the two parts of the bridge. However, Olivia slips and falls into the water, narrowly surviving. Tragically, a car plunges from above and strikes her, resulting in her death. Meanwhile, Nathan is running for his life when he gets struck by a swinging bridge cable with such force that it crushes him to death. Amidst the chaos, an asphalt tanker flips due to the collapsing bridge, causing hot asphalt to spill onto Dennis, burning him severely. His body melts from the intense heat and falls into the river below. Peter and Sam manage to leap onto the railing just before the remaining section of the bridge collapses. However, tragedy strikes as steel rods being transported by a truck pierce through Peter, fatally injuring him. Sam attempts to continue climbing, but he is tragically cut in half by another sharp metal sheet. It turns out it was all Sam's premonition. Just as he foresaw, the bus stops, he sustains a cut on his thumb, and the song "Dust in the Wind" begins playing on the radio. Sensing something is wrong, he gets up and shouts at the top of his lungs that the bridge is about to collapse. He grabs Molly's hand and leads her off the bus, with Peter, Olivia, Nathan, Candace, Isaac, and Dennis following him to inquire about the situation. Suddenly, they witness the bridge cables snapping apart. Realizing Sam was right about the impending collapse, they sprint to safety as fast as they can. Thanks to Sam's warning, all of them survive. As expected, Sam is questioned about his prior knowledge of the bridge's collapse. Agent Jim Block poses the classic question, asking him how he knew. Sam responds that he saw a vision and that he knows nothing more. However, the agent remains suspicious of Sam's statement. At the memorial service for his deceased colleagues, Sam encounters William Bloodworth, the same mortician seen earlier. William cryptically warns him that death doesn't like to be cheated. When Sam and Peter inquire further, William simply advises them to be cautious from now on. Later that night, Sam visits Molly at her house and inquires about the reason for their breakup, expressing his readiness to reconcile. Molly explains that Sam didn't do anything wrong. It is revealed that Sam wants to pursue his dream career as a chef and has been offered an incredible opportunity in Paris. However, accepting the job would mean leaving Molly behind. As he can't make that decision, Molly decides to make things easier for Sam by breaking up with him, knowing how much he loves cooking. Sam insists that he won't leave Molly for the job, but Molly doesn't want to deprive him of his lifelong dream. The next day, Peter attends Candace's gymnastics routine. Candace doesn't feel like practicing, but Peter encourages her to do so, stating that it is the last practice of her college career. Reluctantly, Candace begins her practice by using the balance beam. Suddenly, water begins to drip from a leaking pipe in the ceiling, landing dangerously close to a naked wire on the floor. To add to the danger, a screw from the exhaust above comes loose and falls onto the balance beam. Miraculously, Candace manages to avoid injury as she navigates past the loose screw during her routine. After finishing her practice, she dries herself off with a towel, unaware that the water on the floor is conductive and could electrocute her. Just in time, she throws the towel onto the floor, preventing herself from getting an electric shock. Candace then proceeds with her routine on the bar. Meanwhile, another student begins using the balance beam. During her practice, the student accidentally steps on the loose screw, causing her to stumble in pain and fall. As she falls, her arm strikes the chalk powder container, causing the powder to cloud the air and hinder Candace's vision. This disruption causes Candace to lose her balance and fall to the floor in a tragic manner, resulting in her leg bones and vertebrae piercing through her flesh, which results in her immediate demise. Peter is deeply affected by her death. When Sam arrives at the gymnasium to comfort Peter, he encounters creepy William there. The next day, while everyone is out of the building, Isaac rummages through their belongings and steals a spa coupon from one of the employees' drawers. He goes to the spa and flirts with every woman he encounters. When the receptionist notices his behavior, she assigns him an older masseuse. Isaac, disappointed that he won't be receiving massages from the attractive women, is now dissatisfied. The masseuse begins treating Isaac with acupuncture technique, leaving needles all over his body before stepping out to let him relax. Suddenly, ash from an incense stick falls onto the towel beneath, setting a fire due to the still hot embers of the stick. Isaac calls for help, but his cries seem to go unheard by the staff. As he tries to move, one of the massage table legs breaks, causing him to fall to the ground. In his prone position, all the needles deeply penetrate his body. As he fell, he also knocked over the alcohol bottle that the masseuse used to sterilize the needles. Summoning all his strength, Isaac attempts to rise, but before he can act, the entire room ignites due to the alcohol. While struggling to avoid the flames, he inadvertently crashes into the wall, causing him to collapse once more. Just as he believes he's found a safe spot, the shelf attached to the wall gives way, leading the heavy Buddha statue to plummet down and crush his head. Sam and his friends arrive at the scene, where Sam once again encounters William. Suspicious of his presence, Sam confronts him, questioning why he's following them. William, a medical examiner and mortician, explains that he's merely doing his job. Sam, recalling William's warning at the cemetery, presses him for answers regarding the fate of his friends. William reveals that he's witnessed similar situations before, where a select few survive a disaster, only to be hunted down by death one by one. He acknowledges that Sam and his friends altered their fates on the bridge, causing a ripple in reality. When Sam asks if there's any way to stop it, William explains that by getting off the bridge that day, they inadvertently allowed death to claim someone else in their place. According to him, they claimed their spots in the realm of the living, and those who perished took their place in death, as that's the only way to balance the scales. When Peter questions if they have to sacrifice someone to preserve their own lives, William replies that he's not the one making the rules. Declaring that he merely tidies up after the game ends, William leaves the group feeling anxious and bewildered. Peter subscribes to the theory and questions whether they are all destined to die. Sam discloses that Holly survived in his premonition because he escorted her to safety before the bridge crumbled. Learning this, Peter becomes enraged, unable to accept that Sam prioritized Holly's life over theirs. He demands to know why Holly was deemed more deserving of survival than Candace. After he leaves, Sam and Holly decide to tell Olivia about the situation. Olivia is at her eye doctor's clinic for laser surgery. She's a bit nervous, so she grabs one of the teddy bears the doctor usually gives to his young patients. Once her head is secured, the doctor uses a device to keep her eyelids open during the surgery. Olivia holds the teddy bear so tightly that one of its button eyes falls to the floor. As the doctor switches on the machine, he prepares to record some readings but needs assistance from his assistant. He steps out, leaving Olivia alone. Suddenly, a glass of water from a water dispenser falls onto a socket, sparking a malfunction in the laser coolant system. Over time, the laser's intensity increases. As the beeping sound grows louder, Olivia realizes something is wrong. Panicked, she tries to grab the remote, but it falls, accidentally turning on the laser. With the coolant malfunctioning, the laser emitted from the machine becomes extremely hot, cutting Olivia's eyelid when it touches her skin. Just then, Sam and Holly arrive at the clinic and inform the ophthalmologist about Olivia's perilous situation. Just then, they hear her screams, so they rush inside. They find Olivia freed from the head restraint, but the laser has already caused significant damage. As Olivia stands on the floor, she trips over the teddy bear's eye, crashing through the window and landing on a car windshield before falling onto the road. The accident claims her life. Now, Agent Jim Black is certain that something is amiss, something he's not aware of. Although he knows Sam and Holly are innocent, he still seeks an explanation. When questioned, Sam shares his theory about the disadvantages of cheating death. Due to the tense situation, Holly and Sam opt to spend the night together for mutual comfort. It's during this time that Sam recalls the circumstances of their deaths. Observing the sequence of deaths in his premonition, he realizes they are dying in the same order as they would have died in the bridge collapse. Now it's Nathan's turn. Meanwhile, Nathan is working in the factory when he gets into an argument with Roy, a co-worker who often irritates him. As they argue, Nathan notices the overhead crane moving toward them. He urges Roy to move away, but before he can convince him, the crane's hook falls onto the perforated metal sheet Roy is standing on. Roy falls, and the hook pierces through his head, killing him instantly. Meanwhile, Peter meets Dennis and informs him about the ongoing situation. However, Dennis doesn't believe in Peter's theory of death. Warning him that it's a matter of survival, Peter leaves the office, leaving Dennis concerned. Dennis informs Officer Jim about Peter's unusual behavior. Later, Peter, Sam, and Holly arrive at the factory after hearing about the accident. Obsessed with William's theory of gaining years by killing someone, Peter asks Nathan if he intentionally caused Roy's death to switch places with him. Nathan denies doing it on purpose, but suggests that the accident might have been meant for him, and Roy taking his place could mean he's no longer on the list of impending deaths. Dennis arrives to investigate the situation. When Sam mentions the pattern of their deaths, Peter demands to know who's next. Before Sam can answer, a wrench thrown by a belt sander strikes Dennis's face, killing him instantly. That night, Molly urges Sam not to go to work, fearing for his safety. However, Sam argues that Isaac died on a massage bed, implying that if death is meant to come for him, it will find him regardless of whether he stays. Therefore, he decides to go to work anyway. After his shift, Sam invites Molly for a romantic dinner at his restaurant. Their evening is interrupted by Peter, who knows it's his turn to die. He reveals that he contemplated killing a stranger on the road but couldn't bring himself to do it, believing the innocent person didn't deserve to die. Peter questions if Dennis, Candace, and Olivia didn't deserve to die, then why should Molly be allowed to live? He pulls out a gun, intending to kill Molly so that he can take the remaining years of her life. Before Peter can shoot, Sam flips the table over him, giving Molly a chance to hide in the kitchen. Sam instructs Molly to stay hidden while he grabs a knife, preparing to confront Peter. Causing a distraction, Peter knocks Sam unconscious and starts searching for Molly. Just then, Agent Jim arrives in the kitchen, having been following Peter since he received a call from Dennis. Before Holly can say anything, Peter shoots Jim dead, successfully trading his life for Jim's, gaining all the years Jim had left to live. With his goal accomplished, Holly advises Peter to leave. However, Peter realizes that Holly is a witness to the murder of a federal agent. He doesn't want to risk being caught and imprisoned, so he targets Molly again. Before he can harm her, Sam regains consciousness and attacks him. A fight breaks out between them, with Sam ultimately taking Peter's life in self-defense. With Peter dead, Molly claims that Sam might have also gained Jim's remaining years. Their suspicions are confirmed when Peter's gun, which had fallen onto the stove, fires itself, narrowly missing Sam's face. It's then that the duo realizes the list of deaths is over, and they can now live in peace once more. 2 weeks later, we find Sam and Molly aboard a flight to Paris. Sam has taken a new job and decided to bring Molly along. As they're stowing their luggage, the plane is suddenly filled with the voice of Alex Browning, instructing everyone to evacuate. It's the same Flight 180 that Alex and his friends were supposed to take to Paris. After they disembark, the plane takes off without them. While Sam listens to music, the song "Dust in the Wind" comes on the radio, the same song he heard on the bus on the bridge. He panics, and soon after, he gets the same cut on his thumb as before. Overhearing the stewardess discussing Alex's vision with a passenger, Sam becomes increasingly anxious. Suddenly, the plane's wing catches fire, causing structural damage. The hole created by the fire is right where Molly and Sam are seated. The force of the air sucks Molly out of the plane, leading to her death. Shortly after, the plane explodes, engulfing everyone, including Sam, in the explosion. In a restaurant, we see Nathan drinking with his colleague, remembering Roy. His colleague informs him that the company conducted Roy's autopsy for insurance reasons and discovered an enlarged blood vessel in his brain, dangerously close to bursting. They concluded he could have died any day. Nathan feels concerned upon hearing this, realizing he swapped places with someone who had little time left. Suddenly, debris from the crashed plane falls on the restaurant, killing Nathan instantly. Each installment reveals a chilling story of survival against impossible odds,